Hey everyone, it's Mojaxx, back in the DJcity UK lab. Shure is one of those names. When you think about microphones, they are one of the first brand names that pops into your mind because they've been making world-renowned microphones for literally decades. So I was pretty interested with the move in DJing towards live streaming, etc. in 2020. That coincided with Shure releasing this, the MV7. This is a microphone designed for podcasting, live streaming, gaming, etc. So it seemed to me like quite a good fit, and I thought I'd better take a look. Let's get to it. This is one of those reviews where I'm a little late to the party. Being aimed at a wide variety of content creators, not just DJs, there are already a ton of different reviews of the MV7 out there, including an incredibly in-depth one from Podcastage, who is the king of mic reviewers in my book. But of course I approach things from a different perspective here on this channel, and I'm looking strictly at how the MV7 can fit into a DJ's workflow. I'm using it now of course to do this voiceover, and so that should give you a decent idea of how it sounds. It's currently hooked up via USB with no processing applied. The MV7 is Shure's first microphone specifically targeted at podcasters and streamers. It's available in both black and the silver they sent me to review. I think I prefer the black, but I always appreciate having options. It has a street price of around $250 in the US, which puts it squarely in the middle of the broadcast dynamic mic category. There are decent mics in that space for $100, or you can spend hundreds. It's built very well indeed, as you would expect from Shure. The construction is mostly metal, and under the foam windshield the capsule itself is very well protected, with the kind of grille you might find on the company's more traditional handheld mics. It's not completely devoid of microphonic pickup if you bang your stand like this. Some noise does come through, but I've heard a lot worse. The horseshoe-shaped mount is solid too, and holds the MV7 in place very securely. My only criticism is that there is no built-in rotation of the mic from side to side, so if you're the kind of DJ who moves your mic or yourself around a lot and there's no rotation in your boom arm itself, that might be frustrating. The MV7 is a dynamic mic, which means it doesn't require phantom power, and so you can connect it directly to your DJ mixer or controller via XLR. Condenser mics can be a real hassle for that. It also has a fairly hot output, which can't be said for the classic SM7B, which the MV7 is clearly paying tribute to. I didn't find any issues getting a loud enough output with the MV7 on anything I plugged it into. It's an end address mic, so you speak directly into the front of it, and the cardioid polar pattern is pretty tight, meaning the MV7 does a good job of rejecting noise from the sides and behind. This is important for things like DJ live streams, where you might need the mic to cope with your monitors being fairly loud. Using the XLR connection, the sound profile of the MV7 is what it is. There's no adjustment beyond what you have available on whatever you plug it into. It covers a wide frequency range from 20Hz to 20 kHz, but you can both see from Shure's graph and hear for yourself there is quite a boost in the upper mids. Whether that works for you will depend on your voice. Myself, I like the clarity that it offers. When I'm speaking over music, it helps my voice cut through nicely without too much boomy low end, but everyone's voice is different. So as an XLR microphone, so far so good, but one thing which sets the MV7 apart from some of its competitors is the additional USB connection and accompanying headphone output. Now, a year ago I didn't really care about this at all, but in 2021 the DJ landscape is very different, with live streaming being a huge part of how DJs perform to the public. And what I've been seeing a lot of is DJs connecting their mics directly to their computers via USB or a separate audio interface. Why has that become a thing? Well, firstly, it allows for a greater degree of processing than a DJ mixer typically offers. But secondly, you can set up auto ducking in OBS Studio, which means you can have a great mic sound, but also leave the levels alone on your mixer or controller and record a nice clean feed of your mix with no mic to share afterwards. It's not the solution for everyone, but it's clearly working for a lot of DJs, and that kind of setup is where the MV7 really shines. I'll admit I was disappointed to find that the USB socket on the mic itself is micro USB, not USB-C. That's a rather outdated connector, and it wasn't great when it was current, a bit too fragile for my liking. But the MV7 does come with both USB-A and C leads to hook up to your computer, and they're a good length. Once connected via USB, the controls on the MV7 come alive, with the touch level controls switchable between the mic and the headphone output. There's also a mute for the mic, which is very handy to have right there, and you can adjust how much of the live input and computer return signal is coming into the headphones. At this point, I'll just leave the headphone output stuff there. It's very useful for podcasting and recording, but not really for DJ use. Shure provide their own Mojaxx software as a free download, which allows you to adjust a significant amount of stuff on the mic. So this is the Mojaxx software which Shure supply to use with the MV7. It's quite interesting because I did test this. The mic does actually output through the USB and the XLR at the same time. But the changes that you make with the Mojaxx software do not have an impact on the XLR output. That's always like a clean feed, if you like. So it's great for doing, say, a backup recording, you know, so you've got two recordings going at once, but the changes that you make will only be applied to the USB connection. So we have two modes. There's the auto level mode, which seems to adjust itself automatically depending on the level of your voice, but I'm not entirely sold on that. I always prefer manual as a rule. You have got near and far, so we're in the near position here, and we can set it to far, which with this mic, with the plosives, etc., which I'll talk about in a bit, I generally prefer the far setting. You can also change the tone, dark, neutral, and bright. But yeah, we'll stick to the manual settings on the whole. You can save them as a preset for different environments or for different people who are using the mic, for example. You can activate the mute from here. So that allows you to turn it on depending on what you're doing, and you can adjust the gain on the mic as well, so you can bring that right down if you're in a loud environment or you're speaking loudly. Lots of adjustment there. Monitor mix, this applies if you're using the headphones with it. If you're listening back to what you're recording, you can have just the microphone itself, and you can have playback from the computer that's coming back in, and you can say, if you're, say, streaming a game or something like that, you can listen to the audio back from that. Then we have the EQ. I've got it in flat at the moment. Then we have a high pass where it just takes off the low end for you. Then there is a presence boost, which gives you this sort of upper mids kind of push towards the top. And then we have a combination of the high pass and the presence boost as well. And then that will sound different. You know, you get this different kind of presence when you're up close on the mic as opposed to being further away. So it depends how you're going to use the mic, what your voice tone is like to start with. I'm going to stick to, obviously, the just flat EQ for the time being. Then we have the limiter. Now, this is a software limiter. It's not a hardware limiter, so it does work. So if I get very, very loud without the limiter on, you can hear some distortion there. And if I hit the limiter on, it does a pretty good job of catching the audio and actually, you know, reacting to it. But it is just a software limiter. It's not particularly impressive compared to like a hardware limiter. Let's say you went into something like a processor from DBX or something, then you could get better reaction from that. Then the same kind of applies with a compressor. That's pretty good. You have light, medium, and heavy compression, which really kind of brings up that presence in the voice as well. So it really depends what kind of effect you're trying to achieve and where you're going to be using the mic. So if I want to get right close up for that kind of podcaster kind of boomy sound, then you can do that. If you want to pull back the compression a bit, go a little bit further away perhaps, or boost it up. There are lots of options there. But of course, because it's a USB mic, you can throw this into other plugins. For example, if you have plugins that you like to use on microphones for vocals, you can use those with the mic as well. There's nothing that says you have to use the Mojaxx software, but for what it is, it works pretty well. Finally, there's one issue on the MV7 which a lot of reviewers have talked about and was immediately apparent to me. When you're close up on the mic, it just doesn't handle plosives very well at all. Please bring pizza pronto. When I'm doing things like this voiceover, my mic technique is generally pretty good, but when I'm DJing, that kind of goes out the window, and I get all up in the mic's face like I'm trying to eat it. Not good, I know, but I'm not the only one who does it. Put simply, the stock windshield on the MV7 is just not made of very dense or thick foam, and so it really lets the side down when it comes to plosives and sibilants. Thankfully, there is a solution, first identified by Scan Pro Audio here on YouTube, I believe. The stock windshield for the SM7B, the RK345, fits the MV7 very well, and it does a much better job. You can pick that up for under $20, and it makes a huge difference. If you don't want to use the MV7 super up close, you will find that you can do without it, but for people like me, that seems like a very smart buy. So there you go, my take on the MV7 from Shure. I hate using the phrase Swiss Army knife when talking about gear because it's so cliche and I overuse it, but what else can I say apart from this is the Swiss Army knife of microphones? It does everything, and it does everything to a high standard. The absolute killer thing is the dual outputs. You've got the XLR and you have the USB and you've got that headphone output as well, thanks to the audio interface in there. So it's so flexible. It will work with any setup really that you have today. And it will work with whatever setup you change to in 6 months or a year's time. You'll still be able to use your MV7. So you can look at it as a really long-term investment. I think it will last as well. You know, the build quality, absolutely solid. Sound quality is great. So if you're looking to level up your microphone game for your studio, be it for your live streams, podcasting, anything like that, then yeah, the MV7 is absolutely worth a look. Thanks for watching today. Make sure you subscribe for all our future tips, tricks, and product reviews. I'll see you soon.